Great. Welcome everyone to our exciting webinar that we have planned for today, Readability for All. Improving literacy and engagement through enhanced readability. We are so pleased to be joined today in partnership with Readability Matters and Adobe for this webinar. And as soon as we hear from Ebony about engagement strategies for this webinar, then I'll be introducing our guests.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. If you are unfamiliar with Zoom, you can find the control panel at the bottom of your screen. To access the chat, just click on the chat icon in that control panel, and please select all attendees, or I believe in this case it says everyone, when you make comments in the chat so that everyone can see your comments. To access the hand raise feature, you can click on the raise hand icon in that control panel. And we ask that you use that if you have a tech issue and I don't see your question or comment in the chat. If there are any other problems, please email me at the email address you see in the fourth box. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ebony. So my name is Jen Vanek. I'm Director of Digital Learning and Research at the EdTech Center at World Ed. Many of you know that we have been running these webinars since March and with the hope of bringing you extra resources, strategies, and innovations that can help make it easier to serve your learners through education technology, especially now when we're mostly working remotely. Today we are joined by Kathy Crowley and Marjorie Jordan from Readability Matters and from Rick Treitman from Adobe. We have been invited into collaboration with these two organizations in order to help explore how to make digital text more readable for adult literacy students and adults who are building their English language proficiency and literacy. So today we'll be doing that through the agenda that you see on the right. We'll do a little bit of setting the stage, then we'll be hearing some strategies around readability from Readability Matters, and we'll be hearing from Rick as he introduces a new tool that you can use for free called it's Adobe's Liquid Mode. Then we'll have some Q&A and some action steps and some more resources for you to help you engage in this work. So I'm joined today by my colleagues at World Ed. You've just heard from Ebony, but also Victoria Neff, who you will now hear. You'll hear a little bit more about our work at the EdTech Center from Victoria.
Great, thanks so much, Jen, and it's great to be with you all today. Just a quick note about who we are before we get started. World Education is an international nonprofit that advances economic mobility, learning, and life outcomes through education for learners and communities around the world. And at the EdTech Center at World Ed, we are leaders in integrating technology and education and workforce development programs to support our partners to accelerate learning and increase the reach and impact of their work. And particularly in the US, we have been on the front lines of this work on digital transformations and digital inclusion, helping adult educators, workforce training providers, refugee and immigrant serving organizations, and many others leverage technology to increase the reach and impact of their work, as well as advocating for important access and equity issues. And so you'll see on the right side of the screen there some of the national and international coalitions that we lead or are involved in. The Digital Us Collective Impact Coalition, we helped design and formed nearly 2 years ago to build the technology skills and digital resilience of learner workers. And IDEAL Consortium is a consortium of states in the US that come together to discuss issues around adult distance and blended learning in adult education, and we provide professional development to those states. And we're also bringing our leadership and expertise on these issues to the global stage as members of UNESCO's Global Education Coalition. So that's just a little bit about us. I'll turn it back to Jen.
Thank you, Victoria. Thanks, Victoria. Yes, I was muted. Just want to do a little bit here to set the stage for what comes next. If anybody who's been involved in a conversation with me about remote support for adult literacy students has probably heard these stats, because I think they are so impressive. 96% of adults in the US have some sort of cell phone, and all but 15% of those are actually smartphones, yet 17% of adults are smartphone dependent. And actually, if you dig into the Pew data, what you see is that it's over half of households with an annual income of $30,000 or less, which you might agree kind of intersects with the learners that we're all working together to support. So in order to really effectively serve these learners, we need to maximize as many resources and strategies as we can to help them learn on their phones, to help them make better access of resources that they can receive on their phones. Reading digital text can be a huge challenge for anyone because of the formatting of PDFs, the fonts and the styles that are chosen. What you see on the right is actually a brief that I wrote with AIR, and just sharing a screenshot of this or a photo of this just to show you that, you know, this really professionally laid out brief, which is accessible and very readable on a website, is actually really hard to untangle when you put it on a mobile device. So we're really excited about hearing from Readability Matters today and from Adobe to hear more about the work they've done in the past and the affordances and the tools that they're able to suggest we use to make things like this more readable on a phone. But then also to explore how we might move forward together in order to see how these things play out with adult literacy students and adult ESL students. Much of the work in the past has been done either with K-12 students or with a more traditionally post-secondary crowd. And so now we're turning our attention together to sort of forge ahead in bringing you innovations so that we can make digital text more readable for the community of learners we've all committed to supporting. So with that, I would like to show you a little bit of a video. One of the things that happens when you get to partner with organizations like Adobe is we get to be involved in these really cool products and innovations around actually spreading the word. So I'm just going to hit play here, and we'll take a minute to watch this really great video that just came out last week. Possibly. Oops, sorry.
We've been reading fixed text for maybe 2,000 years. Having to move to online and electronic learning, a lot of people have trouble reading. If I get a PDF on my phone, but I've got to pinch and zoom to try to read it.
Important for all readers, whether you're a good reader or a poor reader, an adult or you're a child. Personalizing text can actually improve your reading speed, your accuracy, and your comprehension.
I saw a child really struggle learning to read, but with a personalized reading format, you could see him visibly relax. And that was the beginning of a life change for that little boy. And sorry, you remind me not to tell that story.
Why?
My son.
supervise my reading. It helped me to really understand what I was reading. On top of that, I wasn't straining my eyes, so the whole experience was great.
Adobe's incredible scientific community are a part of this effort, and we're hoping to engage other industry partners, because one of the things that has become clear to us is that the academic community in partnership with industry is really likely to be the combination that solves this problem.
When for-profit businesses, nonprofit organizations, education get together to solve a big problem, everybody's boat floats. And we really need to invite all those partners in on this, because we're talking about something as universal as reading. It's a whole lot bigger than Adobe, but we'd love to be the spark that gets us started.
This is great. Thanks so much for sharing that opportunity for us to be involved in that video, Rick. And so now I would love to introduce Kathy Crowley, founder of Readability Matters, to just talk a little bit about that work. Then we'll hear from Rick, and we'll start seeing some of these strategies in action.
Thank you, Jen, for the nice introduction, and welcome. We're so excited to be partnering with the folks at EdTech Center at World Ed and with Adobe to bring reading to everyone. So can you move ahead? Thank you. So this is something we like to show all the time. Sometimes text is crowded. You can read this, but do you really want to read this? And we advocate for small changes to text can actually format and yield big results. So as you know, 70% of us in the country and globally could be better at reading. We're a nonprofit, just like World Ed, focused on bringing reading to all. We believe that we need to move from a one-size-fits-all format of reading, you know, what you see in a book or what's kind of forced on you with certain digital services, to one that's personalized for the reader, for you as a reader. Move ahead, please. Thank you. We've been working on this for about 15 years. We've been studying this for people of all ages, and we've come to the conclusion four tenets of what is important. First, and most importantly, there's no best format for all readers. Personalization is required. Both children and adults benefit, and the performance improvements happen across all levels, whether you're a struggling reader or you're a good reader. You'll see benefits up and down the reading spectrum. And the improvement is instantaneous. This is not a reading instruction program. We support good learning. We support educators like you who are in the classroom really trying to help learning. We are just in support of that. So it's an instantaneous change in how you see text. We as a nonprofit really do see that we imagine a world where everyone has easy access to reading material. We really believe in the individual making them the best reader that they can be. And we do this from working with partners like Adobe and World Ed, creating an ecosystem of technology, ed tech, and publishing coming together to bringing this personalized environment to your reading surfaces. We really appreciate the partnership, and we hope that you being introduced to this opportunity of bringing readability to your students in the classroom will provide this and bring these affordances to your students.
Thanks so much, Kathy. It's great to be able to make the connection between your organization and all these adult basic ed practitioners and adult literacy practitioners that are on this call. So at this point, I would love to introduce Rick Treitman, entrepreneur in residence at Adobe, who's going to say more about Adobe's work in this area and introduce you to their tool launched just earlier this week called Liquid Mode. And Rick, I will stop my share if you are ready to start sharing.
I am ready to start sharing. Let's see if I can do it. It's still waiting for you to stop. Let's see. Let me try again.
There
Okay.
you go. Thanks.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jen. Kathy, that was a great intro. Thanks, everybody, for attending. I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to be a little bit repetitive, but I'm going to go into a little more depth than we went into in the video. These are some early slides that we use to present to non-educators. I'm sure that most of the people in this group know this, but here in the United States, we've only got about 35% of our students at all grade levels reading proficiently. And we've only got 54% of our adults who can read, who can read at the 6th grade level or above. According to a study that was just put out by the Barbara Bush Foundation. Are we here?
Rick,
Yes.
this is Victoria. Your screen is black.
The screen is black. It says stop sharing. Bring your shared window to the front. Hold on. Let me just see what's going on here. It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if we didn't have a Zoom call.
We did see your screen when you first started sharing.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Okay,
There we go.
You're seeing it now, but when let me just. And are you seeing it now?
No, unfortunately, it didn't go into. Okay. Well, we still see it, but
Yeah, I can see 35%.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to take up the point. That's what we want to see. Are you with me?
We're with you.
Okay, so what I was doing that you couldn't see was I was going through all of these numbers. And I think I was on this slide. Barbara Bush Foundation just put this out about 3 weeks ago. This is a $2.2 trillion cost to the US. So when we present to business people, this tends to strike a note. And the question is, how do we make this better? And we sort of, sometimes what we like to do in high tech is just think about, if you just could push a magic button, how do you do things? So the question that we asked here was, what if we could create magic reading glasses? If we could, virtually take people to the eye doctor and fit everybody out with a pair of glasses that were going to work for them, where we could try out different reading formats and see how people read as we stretch the text or compress the text. And one of the things that we found so far, and Kathy showed a little bit of this, is that for many people, they experience what we call crowding, and many of you may be a bit familiar with this. When they look at text, the text just seems to be all mushed together. And if it gets very small, it gets incredibly hard to read. And we think that font makes a big difference as well. So here I'm looking at approximation.
Rick,
yes.
This is Victoria again.
We just need to interrupt you because I have seen this presentation and the slides are beautiful and I want everyone to be able to see them too, but we're still stuck on 35%.
All right, I'm gonna have to, I think Zoom is not liking
it. Well, now we can see reading can be very hard if the text is
all
small.
right, so we can't go full screen for some reason on Zoom.
Okay, that's not a problem at all.
That's our problem. So we're just gonna do this. And you'll have to put up with my header here. So what I was talking about was this effective crowding. And when text, for many people who are trying to either learn to read or are struggling to read, this is sort of what they're perceiving. And as I was saying, and if the font is a weird font, and this is an approximation of the original font that Gutenberg used when typesetting was first introduced. Here's a page from Gutenberg's Bible. Then you can really struggle to make out each of the characters. But if you can start to add space, if you can start even to change font, you can see that although we're intentionally abstracting here, does make a great big difference. And Readability Matters has been doing this work for 15 years, as Kathy just told you. And they knocked on Adobe's door about 4 years ago with these theories. And basically the reason that they were contacting us is that they were trying to find tech companies working in text and working in documents who could start to put some of their theories into action with their tools. And it just so happened that we were working on something that intersected, and we've been working together ever since. And I think the easiest way to visualize what Readability Matters is saying is that if you can take a set of text and give people control, so that if they can choose a font that works for their particular eyesight, if they can choose a size that works for them, and bigger is not always better, if they can vary the space between lines, and very important for that crowding issue that we've been talking about, if they can add some space between characters, it can often make a big difference in the effectiveness with which they read. So we do think that it's possible to build a pair of reading glasses, and we do think that Adobe might have a way of doing that. But we don't just jump into things and build them and hope that they work. We generally start with prototypes. So what I'm showing you here are screenshots of the first prototype we built that incorporated Readability Matters theory. And we didn't mess around with a cool UI or anything like that. You can see that we just added controls for spacing and font and size of font. And we gave it to Readability Matters, and they went off and did a study in San Jose with about 80 students. And what we did with those students was they took a base test, and in the third grade class that we were working in, we saw a wide range of abilities. The fastest student was reading at 163 words a minute, but the slowest student, and I see I'm missing the bottom of my page here a little bit. Let me see if I can just, the slowest student was reading almost 100 words a minute slower. We then used our prototype to find the best reading format for each student. And what you see is quite a bit of improvement for most of the students when they found a format that worked for them. And we like to start with our slow student, who was at risk not only of having to repeat the third grade, but at risk of probably never developing into a good reader, and really jumped him into kind of the middle of the range. He was still at some risk, but this was the first time that he had a format that worked for him. But what's really interesting here is that he jumped 27 words a minute, but so did our fastest student. And this is something that is really important for us. We're not a remedial tool. Yes, we can be used in remedial situations, but a tool that gives people control over their format is just as important for a top reader as it is for a reader who's struggling. Another way to look at what happened in this classroom was that the median jump was about 20 words a minute. Now, I think most of you know that a third grader typically adds, I think it's 0.8 to 1.2 words per minute to their speed per week that they're in school. These kids had been in school for about 6 months, by the way. Now, these kids jumped 20 words a minute, which is 20 weeks of development. And they made that jump simply by twiddling the formats and finding the format that worked for them. Over half of the kids jumped 20 weeks or more. And we saw similar improvement in the 7th grade, not quite as dramatic. The reason for that is that this was a read out loud test, and you can only read so fast. And these kids on the whole were 75th percentile readers already. So we saw improvement in the 7th grade. Some kids didn't improve at all. Nobody went backwards. But again, you can only speak so quickly. In the test that we did, we had 5 different characteristics that we could adjust: font size, character spacing, line height, and then character stretch is the ability to actually fiddle with the geometry of the font itself. And in this case, we found that if we could stretch the font out a little bit, we could get a better reading result. We have since done work with adults where all we've done is change font. And as we were showing you with the Gutenberg example a little while ago, simply changing font can make a big difference. And this is just as a quick shot of the increase in words per minute with an adult population. And this is, I think, about 450 subjects that we used in this study. And we'll talk about it more in a minute. So basically what this comes down to is that we do think that we can create a magic pair of reading glasses, albeit an electronic one, for readers. As Kathy said before, each of these pair of glasses are going to be different. We all wear different correction for our eyes, and people read different formats, different times. So it's going to be individual. And what we decided to do after building the prototype was to actually build this into Adobe Acrobat Mobile. We call it Liquid Mode. It's actually been in market for 6 months, but we just announced it. We did a silent release to make sure that it was working all right before we said anything about it. And this week at Max, we announced our readability initiative built around Liquid Mode. It's available if you have the latest version of the free Adobe Acrobat Reader on your iPhone or on your iPad or on any of your Android devices. You already have this capability in your pocket or in your briefcase. We are not yet dealing with all 5 formatting characteristics. We're only dealing with 3 of them. It turns out that font substitution is really hard. We're working on it, but it's not in the product yet. And character stretch is even harder still. So that's off in the future someplace. This is a very quick demo of what it looks like. This is our first research paper that we put out. And as you can tell, it's pretty darn hard to read this 2-column research paper on an iPhone. You generally pinch and zoom and kind of swing around the document and work your way through and generally lose your place most of the time. But if you do click on Liquid Mode, which is this teardrop that we have circled at the top, you transform the document. And what we do with Liquid Mode is we get rid of the 2 columns, we flow the document to the size of the window, and now I can read straight down the document. And I've gotten about halfway there for making this document more readable. But if I go to the reading settings and start to customize it for myself, I can do even a little better. So I'm going to increase the font size a couple of times. And then I'm going to add some of this critical space between characters. I'm going to build the spacing to about 115% of what it was. And I'm going to add some leading or some space between the lines. And now I end up with a document that works for me, may not work for you, but this is customized to my reading style. So just a before and after, we've gone into Liquid Mode. This is what we get before we go to the reading controls. And this is what we get after we find our custom format. Now, the important thing here for us is that we are not releasing a one and done, here it is, we just fixed everything. We're at the very beginning of our journey. And I like to say that we've raised a whole lot more questions than we've answered. We're just kind of taking a half step toward addressing this need for individuals to be able to create their own reading experience. And if you go back to the example that we were using with Gutenberg, we've been reading fixed text for 600 years. We've been reading, I made a mistake in that video, by the way. I'm glad it goes by too quickly. I said we've been reading text for 2,000 years. We've been reading scrolls and parchment for 5,000 years since the Egyptians invented writing. And so we've been doing a lot of research on what we might call dead tree reading. We've been doing a lot of research through the 600 years of fixed type on how people read, and what's most effective for people to read. But it's only been in the last maybe 10 years that we've had electronic reading devices with reading controls. And you might say it started with the iPhone, but I can now use my iPhone or my Kindle or Microsoft's Immersive Reader, or even some of the controls in my browser to change the size of my reading, to change the font in some cases. But we've done really very, very little research on what the effects of user-controlled reading experiences are. And so Adobe has decided to create a reading lab in collaboration with the University of Central Florida to start to learn a lot more about what this means. And we want to look at how individuals interact with electronic type and electronic controls, how document design might be affected by this, how the environment might change. I know that when I read in a Kindle, I read a different set of formats on my Kindle in the daytime than I do at night, and how autonomy and interface might help. One of the things that we're concerned with is I might have a pair of magic reading glasses, but not everybody's going to go to the optometrist to find out what they are. And heaven help me if I'm a reading specialist in a large school system and I have to find the reading format for 500 students. That's just not going to happen. So we need to do a lot more work on how people find their format, and a lot more work on what is most effective and whether or not it's an infinite number of formats or a half a dozen. We don't know the answers to that, and that's why we need to do research. And we've started to do it. We've created a virtual readability lab in concert with UCF and Readability Matters. Adobe is underwriting it at the moment. We've done some research. I think we've loaded a couple of our papers into this session. We found, for example, that many people can identify their preference. They know the font they like. But one of our early studies showed that the font you like is not necessarily the font that's most effective for you. But if you can find the right font, and we can go back to this image that I showed you a little while ago, we can increase your reading quite significantly. In some cases by over 50%. In some cases by 10 pages a minute. 10 pages an hour. If you're a graduate student, if you're an analyst, if you're a researcher, if you're in any kind of job that requires heavy reading, this can mean a lot to you. And if you're just learning to read, not having to struggle with the format can make a big difference. So we've now created a virtual readability lab that we're going to invite the world to. This is a screenshot. There's a notion that was sort of pioneered by a woman whose name I forget right now at Harvard, called Lab in the Wild. And what a lab in the wild is an online lab where experiments can be mounted, and anybody can come and take these little tests and learn things about themselves. And at the same time, the researchers can learn things about, large crowds of subjects. In this case, we've got our first 3 studies up. What fonts do people like the best? What is their fastest font and how does that compare with their favorite font? And what's the best spacing that works for them? Now, behind this is a whole set of reading tools. The first thing we had to do was create a corpus of normed reading materials. And we worked very closely with World Education to do this. And some of World Education's documents and stories are featured as part of our corpus. And we're going to make this and other tools, including a virtual eye tracker that we're working on, a virtual chin rest that we're working on, available to anybody who wants to do research in this space. And we're also finding that educators are interested in having their students go through here to determine, to discover things about their own reading style, so that they can then translate that into their work. And we're just starting to do these things. They're all kind of new. And we invite anybody to come and work with us. And as you heard me say in the video, we're really looking to establish partnerships This is not something that Adobe believes is theirs alone to do. All we do is PDFs. There are many, many more reading surfaces than PDF. We're well aware of that. PDF is pretty popular. And so our PDF reader is the first one to feature some of these controls, but we want to create formats and controls that go across the industry. We want to work with nonprofits and education to push the state of the art, to push the state of the learning, to push the research, to make sure that we're providing the right tools in the right settings to help everybody get to this goal of magic reading. These are some of the people that we're working with today. You see that we've got a number of education institutions who have joined the research effort, and World Education and ReadWorks, as I said, both those organizations are helping us with proliferation and with putting together some of our research tools like the reading corpus that we talked about a little while ago. Here's how you can get in touch with us. And I think that there are, I actually had another slide with Readability Matters. Oh, I do, we're on here. So there are three people, three contacts on here. Readable@adobe.com gets to me. You can also get to me at treitman@adobe.com, which we shared with you earlier. Readability Matters is anxious to hear from you. And if you want to play in our lab, it's readabilitylab.xyz. You're welcome to play with the 3 different studies that we have up there right now. We have many more to come. And as I say, we hope that more researchers will be mounting their own studies in the virtual readability lab soon. With that, I am going to stop for questions or whatever comes next.
Yeah, thank you so much. There was a question about the initial formats presented in that early research that you shared, and I think Kathy answered that. Thank you so much, Kathy. And just an extra note, we're really pleased that the change agent has been chosen. World Education publishes a student contributed publication called The Change Agent. I've chatted the link to that, and it's wonderful that there's that the corpus that will be used to extend this research into the adult literacy world is using it is the Change Agent and this group of Change Agent articles. Okay, great. So we actually have a few more things to accomplish today. Rick, I'm wondering if you can just give us a little bit of a demonstration on how people can get access to get in.
Sure.
We can just play the tutorials from here. Go ahead, Victoria. That actually links to the Google folder where the tutorials live.
Great, and I just realized I'll need to restart my share because I forgot to make this sound accessible to all.
So we've put together, we really see this as the beginning of a partnership here, and we've put together a folder, this folder, which I'll be showing in more detail soon, which includes things like how to get into liquid mode. So we have a couple demonstration videos and for iPhone and then one for Android, and we'll just go ahead and play this so you can kind of see the clicks.
So let me try to narrate this. So Victoria shared a document with me. Actually, she shared a folder, and within that folder, I'm going to collect it, pick a document, and it just opens. So if you have your Google Drive connected to your Adobe account, you can open documents direct, from Acrobat and in. Actually, back up. I didn't realize which video we were looking at. Can you back up and let me explain what's going on? Sure.
I'll start at the beginning.
Yeah. So actually, in this case, Victoria is sending me a document. I'm going to open the folder. I'm going to pick the document, but what's going to happen is that the iPhone's PDF reader is going to open that document, which means I won't have access to liquid mode. I have to kick those 3 little dots up at the top. When I click them, I get an option to open in. I pick the open in option, and then I pick Acrobat. and then I have to import it to Acrobat. This is not Adobe's design. This is Apple's design, and it's what we need to live with. But then I can get to liquid mode.
I can go back and show the other video.
And the other video is a little bit easier. And let me just set it up before it starts playing. You can connect your G drive to Acrobat, and then you can open Acrobat first and see the file in G drive and open it directly. So that's what's going to happen in this video. So go ahead. You'll see that I'm opening Acrobat. I open a file, my Google Drive is attached. I go to the shared folder that Victoria sent me, and it just opens. In this case, I'm going to open the Readability Matters document that they wrote with Janae Cohn on electronic reading and digital reading on campus for higher ed. This is a much easier way to do things, and it's pretty easy to connect your Adobe account to any of the shared drives like Dropbox or Box or Google Drive. And we did want to explain these to you because it's not always obvious how to get a PDF into Adobe Reader. And here's the Android version. In Android, you can assign a PDF default reader. And if you want to use liquid mode, we just recommend that you install Acrobat Reader and assign it as your default. And then you don't have to mess around with the stuff you do with the Apple phone.
So Victoria is showing the Android video, which works really similarly. It's from the Google folder, and you open up the PDF, and then you can click the three dots to open with again. And the first time that comes up, Adobe doesn't appear at the top. It's in a list, but then hereafter, then it's viewable. It almost looks like a default.
Let me also give you a bug report. If you're using it on iOS, you may have noticed when I was showing the iOS that there's a little blue circle that calls your attention to liquid mode the first few times you use it. And that little blue circle causes a bug, so that when you click on it, nothing happens. You often have to close the document and reopen it to get to liquid mode. The bug is being addressed.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Rick. And I'll be showing everyone where these live. But just to clarify, before we get into before we go back to Kathy to hear about more readability hacks, there's a question there about how adult learners have been involved as participants in your past research, and forward thinking. Then, how do adult literacy students figure into this?
Kathy, Marjorie, you want to start?
And I may need to unmute Kathy. Oh, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Kathy.
That's a great question. So over the years, we've worked with adults and children. Some of the more formal studies have been in the classroom because it's just easier to get access to children. They're kind of a captive audience, so that they work really well. And the idea of when we run the tests of them reading out loud, children are much more used to that. But working with educational therapists over the years, we have had adult learners. And once they get access to seeing how much their learning improves, it's an easy thing to do. So getting through these initial stages of the technology, once that gets easier, and they can apply it more easily, and you'll see that they'll have no problem going forward. But the reason we're very excited about partnering with World Ed is that we will begin to study your students more deeply and see what other requirements that they have for learning, and then we can build that into our models going forward.
And then I'll just add that the work that we've done with Adobe's internal lab and the lab at UCF so far have been crowdsourced adult studies. We haven't done any child studies from Adobe for IRB purposes. We are in the process of getting an IRB that'll let us work with younger students, but right now we've been concentrating almost solely on adults. we're really anxious to work with World Education because of their learning population and because your population tends to use phones more than anything else. And right now, Liquid Mode only runs on mobile devices. It does parenthetically run on larger Chromebooks, but that's the only time we get it on a large screen. So we think that to the degree that you believe it will help, we do have a delivery tool now that can aid in your teaching and in your students' learning. And as I said earlier, we're at the very, very beginning of this journey. And we really want to work with all of you who are willing to work with us to determine how that journey goes and to learn more as we go.
And there's one more question before we get to the readability hacks. Is there special formatting required in PDFs for it to be compatible with Liquid Mode?
Sort of, kind of. Let me explain. We cannot deal with all PDFs. So for example, we cannot deal with scans yet. So if it's a scanned PDF, we'll reject it. If it's a highly designed PDF, if it's an automobile, if it's a brochure for something you were going to buy, we'll reject it. If it's a PDF made from a set of slides, we really don't know what to do with that. So we'll reject it. But if it's long form reading, if it's primarily text, if it's the kind of thing you would expect to see in a research paper or a novel or straight out reading material, then we can do anything up to about 200 pages. What's going on behind the scenes, by the way, is a really big machine learning AI engine that has to tease apart the PDF, figure out what all the different pieces of the document are, and then reflow it in much the same way you would flow an HTML document today. It's not in any way trivial. It's taken us almost 4 years to get as far as we've gotten. So we are not yet dealing with all PDF types. If it's a well-formed PDF, if it's something that you've written in Google Docs or in Word or even in InDesign for publishing, and you have generated the PDF, then we'll probably work pretty well.
Thanks so much. Okay, so let's bring Kathy back into this. And Kathy, for a few minutes, if you could just share some of these readability hacks that you've found over the years as you've engaged in this research, that'd be great.
So as Rick has explained, it's our goal to really make things more easily accessible and looking for, find your format more quickly and all these types of things we're going to be researching with the team at University of Central Florida. But we get many people asking, what can I do today? I'm, an adult, I'm, at my age, I need, my cheaters. Many of us could benefit from readability, personalized reading formats today. And so what can I do today? So we call them readability hacks. Again, these are first generation tools. We're so excited to partner with Adobe because really reading PDFs is universal. There's everywhere. It's everywhere in the workplace. It's in schools. And so getting access to liquefied text and that you can personalize is huge. But there are other things your students can do. So on the left side, I've got a list of reading applications that you can get on a phone or a mobile device, like Amazon Kindle, Apple Books, etc. And Microsoft Immersive Reader, which if you need a little extra help, that is also an available tool. And on the right-hand side are browser reading tools that could help if there's doing more long reading or doing some research for assignments. So just want to introduce these things to you so you can begin to familiarize yourselves with some of these options. I've got a link straight into our readability hacks. And then we've included an instructor's guide that was written with Janae Cohn, which Rick mentioned before. And this was written really for instructors of college and university learners. So it's explaining why using digital text, the affordances it provides, can be useful in the learning environment. So it's in your folder just in case you might want to take a peek at that. And we promise to, or we shouldn't say promise, we commit to trying to keep these readability hacks up to date as more information comes available, other tools and services. That's it.
Great. Jen, do you want to take these slides or on next steps?
Yeah, sure. The next thing that we're going to do is talk a little bit further about how we can all work together in this effort. Obviously, the first thing you can do is going to the website, readabilitymatters.org/readability-hacks. Check out some of those resources and ideas. And then please do also use Liquid Mode yourself. What we have available here, and Victoria, if you want to go to the folder, we've put together a little bit of a field test opportunity for you to participate in. This is an open linked folder, which you can reach from the slides when we send them out. And in it, you'll find in that Liquid Mode instructional screencast folder, you'll see the videos that we just demonstrated. So you can see how getting in happens if you want a reminder. What the other stuff that we've included, obviously, the slides are in there. You'll see a readable link to the slides, but we've also included 3 PDFs that we think would be great for you to look at through the Liquid Mode affordance in Adobe Acrobat. So that first one that Victoria showed was actually an excerpt from the Change Agent. The Change Agent is a very popular publication published by us that has student contributed text and some teacher writing. I've pulled some excerpts from our current, or the issue on the census at a couple different reading levels. And I've actually played this one through Liquid Mode myself. You can kind of see how these things work. Even you can even then see what happens with embedded media, like what you're looking at right now. So do please check this out, because this will give you an opportunity to see what your learner's experience might be with a reading level that's maybe parallel to what you're using with your learners. And then if you want to experience reading text that is maybe at that accelerating adult readers, that's a good one. This is an academic journal article. Now, if you don't read academic journals every day, I don't think any of us probably do every day, you can get a sense of what it's like to engage with text that's written in a different register than the one you're normally used to reading. And you can get a sense of how plugging in some of the shifts that you can do in Liquid Mode can help you engage with this text in a new way. So I encourage you to do this on your phone, because we know our learners use phones mostly. And I also know, I don't know, my habits are when I come across something in a social media feed is that I'm reading stuff on my phone myself. So when I tested this stuff out in Liquid Mode myself, I was using my phone. The third article that's in there is from Readability Matters. I believe it's the one that Kathy chatted earlier. So you've got ways to learn more about this project as you're actually testing out Liquid Mode. So I hope you'll do that. And then when you're done with that, I would love it if you would please go to this feedback survey. This is the first engagement that we're sharing out within our network to get some initial feedback from you, practitioners in the field, program administrators in the field, just to get your experience. Okay, this is about your experience using Liquid Mode. So please go in, try a couple articles, and do use the articles that we shared, or if you use something else, please tell us what it is so that we can go in and replicate that experience if we want to see what you're up to. And then if you do happen to have a little bit of extra time and want to share it with a learner, at the bottom of the survey here, you'll see that we have an opportunity for you to register some information about that experience too. And then further down, we would like to know if you are interested in being involved even more. So we are going to have a Liquid Mode training webinar in December where we'll get into some more detail about how you can use this in your classrooms. We're also interested in organizing a focus group conversation on your use, the use that you're registering here as you're reading through these articles that we've shared. And then we also would love to start conversations about extended pilots of liquid mode with your students. So if you're interested in engaging in any of these things, please let us know. I want to say that the first 20 people who fill out this form are going to get an annual license from us to the change agent. So the first 20 people who submit the form will get an annual license to the change agent. You can access all of this stuff through the slides, and we will be sharing that out along with the recording to this webinar. So I think at this point, I don't see any more questions to Kathy, Marjorie, or Rick. So, and we've got some interesting, Sherry, we've got some interesting annotation happening, Sherry. Somehow it's showing up. Let's go to the next slide. And Victoria, at this point, maybe why don't you talk through a few more opportunities coming up for professional development with everyone.
Great, thanks, Jen. So every month on the second and fourth Friday, we are hosting 2 unique professional development opportunities. One is our EdTech Center Distance Ed strategy sessions, which we've had since March. And those are a great way for us to share and connect with other practitioners and just hear really cool and innovative strategies and tools and what others are doing to continue their work with distance and blended learning. And we're also offering every 4th Friday, with the exception of November and December. The 4th Friday falls on a holiday. So we'll be meeting early December for this next series. And Ebony will be chatting the links to register for these webinars, and we encourage you to join on those. And the last thing that I want to make an announcement about is we just recently launched a new course, Transforming Distance Education, which is all open and free on our website. And it is designed with micro learning in mind. So everything is modularized in really short bite-sized lessons around these 4 different topics. So we encourage you to check it out. Let us know what feedback you have. And I think that's it. Oh, the last piece is we just launched a listserv that we're using to kind of share practices and have our community connect with one another. And just to share resources and foster innovation across diverse stakeholders. The link is there to join, and I think Ebony has chatted that. Thanks, Ebony. And that's it from me.
Yeah, so we want to thank everybody for being here. This has been a great turnout for Friday afternoon, and special thanks to Rick and Kathy and Marjorie for all of your work and for your energy and excitement about partnering with us in this work and the practitioner network that we are connected to. So I'm super thrilled about this and the potential going forward. I hope that you're all on board with us and won't hesitate to check out those articles, use liquid mode, let us know how it goes, and for sure email us with any questions that you might have. So thanks again, everyone, for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon and weekend.
Thank you, Jen. And thanks, Victoria, too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.